What it is, what it do, YouTube. I'm here to talk about a very popular black man in history. I talked about Sarah Bartman in one video, and I talked about a brother who I'm sure none of y'all know by the name of Masavana in one video. But here, I'm here to give you a slightly more clarified historical version of the Shaka Zulu story. Because generally, probably all you know is that Shaka Zulu was a leader of a tribe in South Africa that resisted white people. And he probably resisted real hard, being that he died over 100 years ago, and we're still talking about him now. But to understand Shaka Zulu, you'd have to understand his mama. This is a drawing of his mother. It's him as a baby. I'll start with a brief foreword. His mother's name was Nandi, the mother of fearsome Shaka. It says, his father, King, I don't even know how to say that. I'll try though. Sinzakana. King S, noticed a young woman who danced better than all the rest. When she leapt in the air with her feet together, it seemed to him that the nape of her neck touched the clouds. And I'll tell you about the story of Shaka Zulu. These are just some pictures of Zulu tribes and village. Say, Nandi was a simple girl who wished for love. One day, on her way to go dancing, she met with high honor and great dignity, and with the greatest dignity, she was a simple woman who wished for a son. She gave birth to a lion of a man who gave her the greatest joy a mother can know, and also the greatest pain. It was Shaka Zulu. And I'll explain to you the greatest pain part, because a lot of women tell you, you better honor black women. Shaka Zulu mama taught him to fight. Shaka Zulu's mama, she didn't teach him his battle strategy, but she did teach him to stand up for himself. The reason why she taught him to stand up for himself, because the kingdom that his father came from was what you consider a high honor kingdom. And they had a lot of rules. They had a lot of rules and they had a lot of laws. They did not believe in making children out of wedlock, and they didn't discriminate against nobody. I don't care if you was an elder, a king, a queen, highly respected, or just a bum. If you had sex without being married, and if you made a child, they would kill you, the woman, and the child. Period. The king was allowed to only have 3 wives. Naturally, the king, the way that inheritance went is that the king, naturally his son would become king after him. But if he didn't have no sons, it would be like his brother's children or then his sister's children and a male cousin. He married 3 different women, and those 3 different women all got pregnant with girls. So Shaka Zulu's mother was a dancer, as you read right there. And, you know, you've seen these dances that Africans do on TV where they jumping up. Now, the thing of it was, she was very short. Her name was Nandi. She was very short. So when she jumped, she looked like she was jumping higher than everybody else. It really stuck out to Shaka Zulu's father. There was only one problem. As king, he had already took the wives, the maximum number of wives he could take, 3. He had already had 3 children. So after looking at her dance and admiring her a lot, he sent one of his couriers to find out which village she was from and to bring her to a certain location where they had sex. Now remember what I said now. She ended up getting pregnant, and after 2 years, she just couldn't conceal it no more from him. She had to take her son to see his father, even though it could have risked her life, and she did. But the father kind of bowled up because there were people around. He was a king. He didn't get a lot of alone time. There was people around, and he said that he didn't know if not that child was his and this woman might be crazy. But in his heart of hearts, he knew it because, according to legend, Shaka Zulu looked just like his daddy. Anyways, besides that, she ended up having to run away from the village. The three women who had girls became outraged, and they chased her. But she had got a head start on them, so they didn't catch her. And she kind of hid. She ended up not being able to go back to her native village with Shaka. She had to hide amongst another clan of people, and she raised Shaka. And naturally, a single woman whom was married to nobody in that village, they knew that she had begotten an illegitimate child. They didn't kill her, but they mocked her and made fun of her. And a lot of other boys harassed and beat up Shaka a whole lot. But Shaka inherited some good genes. He inherited some crazy genes also. Because one thing that we don't talk about historically when we talk about Shaka Zulu is the fact that he was crazy. His mother, tired of seeing him get beat up and made fun of all the time because he was an illegitimate child, she went in the woods and she gave him a stick. It's like a club. And one day he had got beat up so bad that he had been knocked unconscious. But when his mama gave him the stick, a few days later, he found the guys who beat him up on his way home, and he beat the hell out of them. And, it was at that point that Shaka Zulu kind of found out that it was fun hitting people, It was fun beating people and listening to them scream and watching people run, They wasn't so bold when you had something, to give you an advantage. So this is where he started to become bold. And he started to beat up a lot of people. And if there was a hyena or a certain lion that was harassing goat herds or cow herds, as a young boy, he started like King David in the Bible. He was hunting hyenas and lions, killing them with a club. So he started to gather a lot of respect, as you could imagine. And a whole bunch of other guys started getting behind him. And he got upset when he was grown, once he got to his mid to late teens, and he formed a militia that went into his dad's kingdom and basically took that bitch over. They fought a lot of people. I mean, I know I said that real simple, but there was a brutal fight to inherit his father's kingdom, and he had to beat down a lot of people, him and his men. But he trained his men to be fanatically crazy just like he was. Now, Shaka Zulu was a megalomaniac. He was egotistical. Once he assumed the throne, he didn't just call himself king, he called himself the God King. He had very, very strict rituals. His men, he didn't allow them to have sex. He didn't want any men in his army who were married. He didn't want any men who had children. They went out into the woods and they made these gigantic shields. The shields were about 3/4 the size of the man who made the shield. Because whenever they put the shields up, he wanted to just be able to block anybody who might have been shooting at him or striking at him. He organized his men, and he would kill anybody who retreated in battle. If you turned away, he would have you killed. As a matter of fact, the way that his ranks were organized is that there was somebody who had a spear and a knife in your back. So if you thought about turning back, the person behind you would kill you, would stab you so that they hit you in the kidney or the heart. So he didn't allow anybody to retreat. And when you served with him, which was for 3 to 6 years, you couldn't marry or have children or have sex. Or you couldn't engage in homosexuality either. Well, anyways, Shaka Zulu didn't want to be a hypocrite to his men. So he himself never married a single woman. But during certain village rituals, he would get the men together, he would get the women together, and he would have sex with the women. The only thing was he begat, I think, somewhere in the range of, I think it was 36 children, but not one of them survived. He would have them killed the day that they were born. His mother naturally wanted a grandchild, and when one of his children was born, well, conceived by a woman, she went and got the woman, and her and the woman retreated somewhere. And when they retreated, you know, the woman went through the 9 months of pregnancy. She had the baby. And one day, Shaka Zulu's mother, Nandi, she was playing with the baby, and Shaka Zulu found out about it. When he found out about it, he ordered his mother and the baby to come to the center of the village, you know. I think this was an image of, now this is just a random image of a Bantu woman and some pottery in a village. Well, anyways, basically rumor has it that he told his mama to lay the baby down, and when he stood over the baby, his shadow killed the baby. And his mama cried and had a fit. And there were many times where his mother did a lot of crying, and he acted like he didn't really care too much. She had to address him just like everybody else in the kingdom did. She had to address him as her king and her God, which is part of the reason why I say, in my opinion, with Shaka Zulu's daddy being a king, he's one of them guys who came out completely like one or the other. Because back then, they didn't make anybody king who was, you know, a punk. So his daddy had to be a good fighter, and his daddy had to be real, probably egotistical. You know, especially if Shaka Zulu inherited his daddy's character, to make his own mother have to bow to him and address him. And, you know, as I read this whole part in this book about his mother, it was just several times where he yelled at her. There were several times where he didn't allow his own mother to even address him without bowing her head. You know, she had to kiss his feet quite a few times. And he resisted the British. The British couldn't stand him. He lost many engagements. He won a lot. He trained his men well. But with him being as fanatically crazy as he was, the day that his mother died, he didn't cry, but he went into the hut that she was in. He stood over her body for a long time, for an hour. And he stepped outside the hut and yelled. He hollered real, real loud. And everybody gathered around him. And that was supposedly the only time that he cried during his entire life. And he was so egotistical that the 60,000 people in his village, he ordered them to line up along the road that his mother's casket went along, and he made them cry, you know, whether they wanted to cry or not. They had to cry, wail, and fall out. And anybody who wasn't crying hard enough, he had them killed, you know. This was Shaka Zulu now. Well, anyways, with him being as crazy as he was, there were some people in his village who, they pretty much hatched a plan to have him killed and assassinated. I think this is another picture of, it's just a drawn picture of his father and his mother. Village life, a Zulu guy. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they knew how to take pictures right before. They had, it was called, I forgot what that was called, but they knew how to take pictures. I think this is an image, one of the only images of the actual man himself. With a little thing, a little writing right there called Shaka the Military Genius. Well, anyways, basically the way that he died was that Shaka Zulu was assassinated. Some people set him up, and he ended up being killed by three guys who stabbed him. They stabbed him to death and killed him. He was actually betrayed by a guy who was very, very, very close to him. And, he died unexpectedly. Shaka Zulu wasn't that old. He would have only been, I think, in his 30s when he was assassinated. And here's a handful of other village images from Shaka Zulu was a Bantu. Here's some Zulu women, some images of Zulu women. The hairstyle. That's why I say the Native Americans didn't invent the mohawk. That's black South Africans that's been doing this mohawk thing forever. All her hair is cut off. There's another woman, a Zulu woman with a mohawk, and she just has a patch of hair in the back of her head. She got some earrings through the back of her hair and earrings in her ear. The way that his assassination goes is that, I'll read it real quick to you. It says, Shaka had a dream. Shaka had a dream that Mabopa served another king. When he woke, he told the dream to one of his sisters, who within an hour reported it to Mabopa. Knowing that this did not leave him many hours to live, he urged conspirators to seize the first opportunity to assassinate the king. The opportunity presented itself. I'm trying to look around and read at the same time. Forgive me. The opportunity presented itself very quickly. Some Bantus had arrived from far-off lands, bringing crane feathers that the king had sent them to fetch. Shaka displayed his unhappiness at their lengthy absence. Shaka asked them in a harsh tone of voice, what could have taken so long in getting the feathers? Mabopa threw himself on one of them with a stick in his hand, demanding that they explain why they had taken so long to carry out royal orders, and struck them. Aware that their lives were in danger, and supposing that Mabopa had received a secret signal, as usually happened when an execution was ordered, they all fled. I don't know how to say that name. Malagana and Dengani had hidden behind a small barrier very close to Shaka, each hiding a sega, that's basically a knife, under his cloak. Seeing the first people flee and the king alone, the first stabbed him in the back at his left shoulder. Denagi came up and struck him as well. Shaka had only time to ask, what is the matter, children of my father? But the three men struck him with so many quick blows that he expired after running a few yards past the crowd gate. That's the village gate. The few people in the crowd and its surroundings fled into the brush, thinking that the sky was going to meet the earth, because Shaka Zulu referred to himself as the sky god or something like that. But that's the story of the great African warrior Shaka Zulu. Has quite a bit more to his story than what we've been told. And like I said, you're not going to get these Black history lessons in your local school. You can forget about it. You want to learn some Black history, or teach your kids some Black history, bring them here. This is about the only place you're going to see it or hear it. Anyway, it's your boy Vince Rashad, Mr. Dark and Not So Lovely. Holla.